As people are filtering in, we'll go ahead and start the conversation. Today's topic is the COVID-19 vaccine. We have touched on this before a couple times, once early in January and then a little bit in December, but it is obviously still an ongoing topic of discussion. And our goal today is to help you, give you some guidance and some considerations around an internal policy, whether it's mandatory or voluntary, and then some things to consider about that decision. And then we'll touch back on the EEOC's guidance around vaccines, which is the agency that is at the forefront of dictating what you as an employer can do and say in terms of your vaccines in your workplace. So that is our goal today. We will have this posted on our website by close of business today. So you'll be able to have the slides and the recording. And as you all are probably aware, I put lots of text on my slides because I want you to have those later on if you need them for reference. So what we lack in beautiful graphic design and brevity, we make up for in putting the content out there. So that's why you'll see later on that we'll have lots of text-heavy slides. So I apologize in advance. My guest today is she's returning for probably the third or fourth time. It's Kim Alexander from Mammoth Think HR. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Leslie. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, I always love having you, and we know you guys are busy with these same topics, so we appreciate you taking the time to sort this out for our listeners today.
Absolutely. Can't have too much content or education.
I know. Well, it's interesting, and I don't mean to laugh because it's not funny, but it's interesting now that we're in 2021, we're at this intersection of, yes, we have all these vaccine considerations and policies to talk about, but then I still have plenty of clients that are dealing with COVID outbreaks in their workplace. So it's just like, it's like double the amount of information. So there's hopefully light at the end of the tunnel, but we're still in that tunnel.
That's absolutely right. And just like when, last year, this time when COVID was coming out and we had evolving direction or guidance that was given, you're going to see, I think, the same thing with respect to the vaccines. So we'll hit on that a little bit today, but.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I checked this morning. I went in, I told you I checked the EEOC's website and refreshed it, and they hadn't updated it. And that's what we were doing last March and April, right? Is going in, refreshing and trying to figure out what the latest was. And so this information is what we know to be the latest in terms of guidance from the EEOC. And then the work that we've done to research the policy piece of this. And, you guys might have heard in the news that maybe some companies are deciding to go, with a mandatory vaccine. And, but we're going to talk about that today and hopefully help you make your decision. So just a quick reminder. Well, actually, I forgot to say, please submit your your questions in the Q&A function on your screen. If you could use that as opposed to the chat, that would be great. And you can submit those at any time. I did put in the chat, however, a link to the EEOC's page on the vaccine. It covers more than just the vaccine. The vaccine is in section K on that page, and you'll see that it was up. It's date stamped December 16th, 2020. So that is the most recent guidance that we have. And like Kim said, it's reasonable to expect that there will be additional updates in 2021, but for now, this is what we have in terms of guidance. So the big question that I'm hearing pretty much across the board, and I'm sure you have too, Kim, is should we have a vaccine policy for our workplace, and should it be mandatory or voluntary? And I'm going to go ahead and answer the first question, which is yes, you should have a policy. for sure, certain. And even if the vaccine isn't going to be available to your employees anytime soon, or, maybe a month from now, hopefully, or maybe 3 months from now, we're not really sure. Go ahead and getting your ducks in a row and having something in place and knowing how you're going to manage this situation, I think will save you some time and heartache as when it actually starts to hit, people start to get the shot. So the answer to the policy question is yes, you should have one. Should it be mandatory or voluntary? That is really the big question here. The EEOC says that you are allowed to mandate the vaccine in your workplace under federal law. Now, you might have a state law that says otherwise. And I want to say Oregon is a state. If any of you are in Oregon, I think they have a law already on the books about mandated vaccines by employers. And then there are pending lawsuits in several states with the intent of protecting employees who object to the vaccine. So we're sort of in this weird area where the EEOC says you can do it because it promotes, they don't consider it a medical procedure, and it promotes workplace safety and public health. But if you want to do a mandatory policy, you should seek counsel just to make sure there are no lawsuits pending, or nothing else at the state level that prevents you from doing that. And then if you do have a mandatory policy, you'll need to be prepared to make reasonable accommodations for employees with disabilities or sincerely held religious beliefs. And we'll get into that in just a second. And then you might have workers' compensation claims if there are any physical side effects from receiving the vaccine. So that's something to consider. And we have a couple more slides on the mandatory risks and considerations. But Kim, what do you want to comment on anything on this slide?
Yeah, I think, the key there, reasonable accommodations, is if somebody for some reason can't, they're not able to get the vaccine, you're responsible for, providing a reasonable accommodation. Now what could that be? And we're going to talk about how to kind of get to the bottom of that. But, here again, if somebody who can't get the vaccine that you've made mandatory and you can't provide a reasonable accommodation for that, and you're going to terminate employment, you absolutely want to have legal counsel involved prior to doing so. This is still a very new topic for us. It's evolving, and you're going to want to make sure that you've got legal counsel to help guide you through the risks considerations, particularly when taking adverse action against an employee.
Yep. Good point. Just go ahead and protect yourself. So, like I said, state law and workers' compensation claims. I don't know why I have two slides that say the same thing. Oh, well, just want to make sure that these are
they're very important.
They're very important, yes. Okay, so continuing on with, again, risks and considerations for a mandatory vaccine policy. Your employees have the right, your non-supervisory employees have the right to discuss and complain about your vaccine policy in social media. So just be prepared for that. And if you collect any medical information during the process, so say you have a third party come in and administer the vaccine to your employees, and they ask, some screening questions. Are you pregnant? Do you have, have you had COVID before? Things like that. That any answers to those questions must be kept in a confidential file. And then if you have employees, if you mandate the vaccine, but employees are supposed to go get it somewhere else from, wherever, CVS or wherever they end up getting it, you're sort of off the hook for that medical information collection piece. But if they haven't gotten it yet, you can't ask them why. You just can ask them if. And that's because the reason why might be protected medical information. So keep that in mind too, that if you mandate the vaccine, that this is what you're going to have to contend with, depending on how you roll it out, whether it's in-house via a company that you hired to administer the vaccine, or if you just have the employees go out and get it somewhere in the marketplace. And then as Kim mentioned before, if somebody loses their job because they refuse to get the vaccine and don't qualify for a reasonable accommodation, you would want to run that by council. I wish we had a better answer for you on that, but like Kim said, it's such a new area.
And I'll just add to that, Lesley,
Yeah.
if we just go back to the section 7,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to allow the employees the right to complain. It doesn't mean that you can't make them get the vaccine. It doesn't mean that you can't mandate the vaccine. You just have to allow them to complain if they don't, if they have feelings about the vaccine one way or another.
Yeah, you can't terminate them for posting about it.
Right.
And that goes, section 7 covers, any type of, it basically gives employees the rights to organize and discuss any type of, their compensation or whatever else they have a beef about. And the vaccine is now added to that list.
Correct.
Okay, and just continuing on the risks and considerations for mandatory policy. As we all know, the vaccine rollout is spotty, and so some employees might not have access to it at the same time as others. This is particularly true if you operate in several different localities or states. You might have people leave who maybe they object to it or otherwise just, are not on board. You might lose folks, and then you should certainly, if it's mandatory, allow them to get the vaccine during working hours and compensate them for that time. That includes, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, but that includes any sort of travel time that they would need to go to and from to get the vaccine.
Yes, I would say. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't think I have this on here, but I will mention that if they have those side effects, we mentioned the workers' comp piece of it. What you probably will see is somebody who just needs to take a day off because they have some side effects. And I would just let them do that if you have a mandatory policy. Just not a big deal. Just take the day off if you're having, soreness or fatigue, and then be done with it. And that will probably prevent any sort of workers' compensation claim, and just all will be forgotten once those symptoms go away.
Correct.
And of course, there's a booster or, a second round of shots. So you have to do this twice. Okay. So all of that were considerations for a mandatory policy. A voluntary policy is the more risk-averse option right now. As Kim mentioned, it's like, it's a new territory, and we don't want you to get, into any sort of trouble if you have somebody who just doesn't want to get the vaccine, or has to, objects to it for disability or religious belief. So voluntary policy is an option. And, you can educate people, lead by example, make it easy to get. If you in your heart would like to have a mandatory policy, but voluntary is, less risky, you can, make a video of you getting the shot. You can educate people about what the risks and rewards are. You can certainly, be like, whenever you need to go, and you'll be compensated for it. So just remove any barriers, make it into a sort of a cultural part of the company's DNA, so that you'll have a higher percentage rate of vaccination. A lot of people talk about incentives, and I think I've heard different opinions on this, Kim, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. But I think it's tricky to incentivize individuals with a gift card or a day off, because what if someone truly has a disability or religious belief, and then they can't get the vaccine, and then that puts them out of the running for the incentive.
Right. And there's another larger issue there, is that if you offer an incentive, like a gift card, something like that, you could potentially be creating a wellness policy. And there would be certain regulations that have to be followed under the IRS and ERISA. I think that's a little bit outside my scope of service my scope. So I don't want to get too much into it, but you would want to reach out to your insurance broker to talk about wellness programs. Now, you could incentivize by giving something very menial like a water bottle or something like that if they get a vaccine. That's something a little bit different. But you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head, Lesley. I mean, it might leave some people out who really don't have a choice in the matter because of an illness or a disability or religious beliefs. So it's better to offer it to, let's try to hit our goal type of thing. Again, consider it a safety goal. We're at 90%, of our goal. So, and then everybody benefits from that.
Yeah, I mean, you could have some sort of goal tracker so that you're not focusing on the individual, you're focusing on the collective organizational vaccination rate. You could give out small tokens, like Kim mentioned, to folks. And like we say in our fourth bullet here, the guidance is even after people get the vaccine, that they still need to wear masks and follow social distancing. So it's not as if people who are getting the vaccine can just show up at the office footloose and fancy free,
right?
Face covering lists, and then the people who didn't get it are like, walking around with masks on, and it's very clear. That's not. I mean, of course, the rumor mill is what it is, but in terms of the optics, people won't be able to tell because social distancing and masks are still in place. The other thing that I've heard about people doing is making it, as part of your policy, make it very clear who and how an employee would approach somebody in management about not getting the vaccine. So, and just make it, make sure that it's clear that you're either your HR person or whoever the appropriate person is going to listen to them and have hear what they're saying and have an open mind and have a discussion with them about why they think that they shouldn't get it, and then go from there. Because especially if you're a larger company and, it just people, word of mouth is one thing, but I think it's really important to make it clear that management is here. Here's the person that you go to or people that you go to, and this is how you get in touch with them.
Right.
And then that final bullet there, I would continue even under a voluntary policy to allow paid time off for side effects. I mean, we're talking like one day. In the long run, it's just so, if they got the shot, that's really the goal. So let's allow them to get it. And then if they have some severe side effects, just let them rest for a day.
Yep. And Lesley, there looks to be a Q&A question in there about if it's voluntary, do you have to pay for their time to go and get the shot? Do you have to? No, because it's voluntary. You wouldn't be required to pay for their time. But could you? Yes. Would that potentially incentivize folks to go and get one? Probably. It's up to the company, though. You're not required to do so.
Yeah, and that type of incentive is a little less risky, I think, because I mean, you're talking about, well, I don't know. It depends on where people are located. I mean, if you're in a rural area and a trip to the doctor or to CVS would take an employee, 2 hours, that's different than a quick, 45-minute turnaround. And who knows what this individual circumstances are. So I think, and Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, but if they wanted to go ahead and compensate people for the time, or say they take their lunch hour, say it takes longer than their normal unpaid lunch hour, which is what Eric is asking about, they could go ahead and just pay that, just go ahead and pay that time. And like you said, kind of pave the way and make it easier for people.
Yes.
To do it.
Yep.
You could also provide, I've certainly seen people do this with testing, but you could provide, and again, it depends on where you are and how the rollout is going in your area, but some preferred sites for people to go get a vaccination. You could hire a company to come and pull a van into your parking lot and have people sign up for time slots to kind of even remove even more barriers, and then you don't have to worry about them leaving the office to go get a vaccine wherever they might find it. So just things like suggestions like that would be helpful for both you and them to sort of put some guideposts around the situation. And let's see, Mary Lou asked a great question. What kind of documentation can we request as proof that they received that shot?
Yep. And I would say a doctor's note, and that would be it. Just, that they received the vaccine, some sort of note from the doctor or from the pharmacy or wherever wherever they received the vaccine. You don't want to get into too much information that you don't need. Just yes or no.
Yeah. Yeah, and I haven't, in full disclosure, I haven't gotten my shot yet, so I don't know what they give you. I'm assuming they give you something. If anybody on here has had experience with that, please let us know. I've had a test, so I've seen what you get. You certainly get all sorts of confirmations of your test results, but I don't know what the vaccine things look like. I've seen plenty of pictures of people getting it, but and that could be, I guess.
Yeah, maybe.
That could be also something, but yeah, certainly there must be something that they hand out that you can produce. Okay, so diving a bit more deeply into the exemptions piece of it. This question is about the disabilities or religious beliefs. How can we determine whether an employee's claim of disability or a sincerely held religious belief is legitimate? And so again, here are my wordy slides, but you're assuming you've got that clear person that they're supposed to go talk to. That person should be prepared with this type of information, assuming each request is bona fide. If it's about a disability, then you would need to request documentation from a healthcare provider to support that need for accommodation, just as you would with any other type of ADA disability accommodation request. So that's on disability. And then religion. This one is a little interesting because, this is the guidance from the EEOC, but in practice, what it's telling you is that if you should go ahead and assume that they have a sincerely held religious belief, but you are also allowed to request, quote, additional information if you have objective doubts about the sincerity of that belief. And it goes on to say, do this only if you have a bona fide and objective basis for questioning either the religious nature of the belief or the sincerity of the belief or practice. The definition under Title VII is broad and protects beliefs and practices with which the employer may be unfamiliar. Employers are likely best served by looping in counsel to navigate this. So, Kim, what does that say to you? How do they interpret that in the real world?
Well, I think from an HR perspective, if I'm the HR individual there, I'm going to accept that person's word that they have a religious, belief. You should use caution in requiring additional information because you have to do so consistently. And if you're going to accept one person's word and not another's, you could be getting yourself into some touchy areas. So, from my perspective, I would only use this, this exception, meaning requiring additional information on a very, very limited basis. And if you're going to, I would reach out to legal counsel, explain why you have a reason to doubt this, and make sure that they say, okay, that meets this requirement, and you can move forward with your request. I wouldn't do it, in a vacuum. I would get legal counsel before I acted.
Okay. And just real quickly, Mary Lou says that her niece in New York State did receive a card to use as proof of round 1 of the vaccine. And that jogs my memory.
That absolutely makes sense. Yep.
Yeah, my mom got it and she got a card. So yeah, they'll need that card not only to provide proof, but also to go back when they get round 2. So I think that's probably, I'm assuming that's going to be widespread practice. So thank you for that, Mary Lou.
Yep. And if I can, Lesley, just say, with respect to the ADA and somebody coming before you with like a disability or an illness, that all you would need to do is enter that person into the interactive process. You're going to give them that medical inquiry form, which I would imagine most of you are familiar with, in order to get the information from their healthcare provider as to why they should be exempted from this. That would be if the reason for the disability isn't obvious. So for example, if somebody comes to you and they're pregnant, you probably don't need that form at this particular time, because obviously they're not going to be able to get the vaccine.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, again, this is, if you have a mandatory policy, then for certain, these are the only ways people could opt out. Well, except for a third way, which we'll talk about in a second. But so you'll definitely want to go ahead and be prepared for these types of requests. And, like Kim said, it's an interactive process. And eventually, erring on the side of believing the employee is safer for you, unless you have a true objective basis for questioning their religious belief, or if they can't, what happens, Kim, if they don't turn in the healthcare, the 80, this is for the disability one, for the medical inquiry form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you've asked them to provide that and they don't, then they're not essentially asking for an accommodation. And so you're going to make them aware that if they don't cooperate in this whole interactive process, basically they're saying they don't need an accommodation, and you can hold them accountable. So that needs to be very clear to the individual when they come forth asking for the accommodation.
And even if you have a voluntary policy, so if you have a voluntary policy, employees who have disabilities or religious beliefs don't necessarily have to tell you that, because they can just opt out. But you still might have some people volunteer this information and say, hey,
correct,
I just want you to know that I'm opting out for this reason. In which case, Kim, do they need to document that?
They wouldn't need to, no, because they wouldn't need to receive an accommodation. The accommodation would be they don't have to get the shot, but it's voluntary anyway.
Right.
So you wouldn't necessarily need that. As if, from an HR perspective, if they come to you and share this information, just say thank you very much. That information isn't necessary because our policy is voluntary, but you as the HR person need to keep that confidential.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now this is that third reason. What about if they don't have a disability, they don't have a religious reason, they just don't trust or believe in the vaccine? What do they do? And, if it's a mandatory policy, then this is a more important question.
Mm-hmm.
What do they do in this case?
Yeah. So the question is, can you accommodate that individual? So, for example, is there a way for you to accommodate? If it is mandatory, basically the way that it sounds, the word is mandatory. If they don't believe in it, they're not willing to do it, it sounds to me that you would need to then terminate their employment. However, before doing so, I would, again, you're going to want to have your legal counsel involved in this discussion. You should basically, especially if you're issuing a mandatory policy, you should be prepared to answer all these questions. How are you going to handle them up front? One of the things, with respect to wrongful termination, I do want to point out is that employees may have a cause of action for wrongful termination in some states. And the reason is that these two vaccines that are out there right now are under the FDA's emergency use authorization. And under this, the individual issuing the vaccine, they are required to tell patients that they can choose to get it or decline it. So, only in states that protect termination for violation of public policy would be okay. But, there's a potential claim here, and you need to be very, very careful. So you're going to want to definitely work with legal counsel.
Yeah, it just, and again, the question was, what about employees who simply don't trust or believe in the vaccine? I have a couple of clients who they already have been sort of tipped, they already have a heads up from some of their employees that they just object to it.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been working with me to come up with a plan of attack, and they, they do have counsel that they're going to
Yep.
consult. But they also don't have their policy. They're still up in the air about whether or not they want to do voluntary or
Right.
mandatory. So
And so,
together.
yeah. And so in this case, this would be just like any other employee relations case. You're going to find out why. Why don't they trust or believe in the vaccine? And if you can answer or educate them to maybe feel differently, that would be great. But before taking adverse action, if they simply say, no, I'm not doing it, then you're going to, again, legal counsel. That's
Yeah.
it's kind of on rotation there.
Yeah. Yeah. We sound like a broken record.
Yeah, thank you. I was looking for that term and it didn't come to me.
Well, we just want you guys to be protected. So that is our best advice in that situation. So a couple other things here, and we're definitely not going to get to all of our slides today, guys, because this is a long deck and we've been having a good conversation, but we'll just get as far as we can. But I did put a couple things here from the EEOC site that I thought were pertinent to you all. One of the questions is about, is the administration of a COVID-19 vaccine to an employee by an employer or by a third party with whom the employer contracts to administer it considered a medical examination? So again, this is like if you hire Better Med to pull up in a van in your parking lot and vaccinate your employees, this question applies to you. It does not apply to you if they're just going out to their, to a place that they're choosing and doing it through their insurance. It's the answer is it's not a medical examination. And you'll see there's some language there that explains why. So if you have an employee, back to sort of our point about people who object, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So if somebody says, you know what, you can't force me to get a medical procedure, that's true, but this is not considered a medical examination. So that would be one way to set the record straight and clear up that ambiguity. A medical examination, really the difference is that it's, you're not seeking information about their impairments or current health status. So the act of the vaccine itself is not considered a medical procedure. Now, like we said before, the questions that are asked before administering a vaccine to ensure that there is no medical reason that would prevent the person from receiving the vaccination, the answers to those should be kept confidential. So that's the question here. Are these questions subject to the ADA standards for disability-related inquiries? And that answer is yes. So if you are hiring a company to come in and administer the vaccine to your employees, or you're administering it to them, and particularly if the employer requires the vaccination to be administered in this way, these screening questions must be, quote, job related and consistent with business necessity. And then to meet this standard, an employer would need to have a reasonable belief that an employee who does not answer the questions and therefore does not receive a vaccination will pose a direct threat to the health or safety of others. So Kim, can you unpack this a little bit? What are they saying here?
So to me, so if the employer requires that employee receive the vaccine to be, so it's a mandatory, right? We're going to provide the service. We are going to tell you that you need to get the vaccine. You need to be able to show from a why these screening inquiries were job related and consistent with business necessity. So for example, might have something to do, like if you're a healthcare provider or something like that. And so then if for some reason either the individual doesn't want to answer the questions or the way they've answered them would basically eliminate them from getting the vaccine, then they need to make the determination without them getting the vaccine, or because they've answered in this way, are they a direct threat to others in the workplace? So that's how I'm interpreting it. And, you know, this is where all of this is really new, because I think that we could all make the case that not getting the vaccine and entering a workplace would pose a risk to others.
Right.
But again, it's still really new, and it would be it's incumbent upon us to kind of follow the guidance that we're being given. There's going to be legislation, you know, we know that that's coming, and so we've got to kind of let some things play out before we just act without legal counsel guidance.
Okay. Yeah, I have lots more to say about medical screening questions, but I'm going to move on from this slide because we have some more to cover. But I will say, you know, it does make me wonder, like, wouldn't medical screening questions be determined by whoever's administering, like by the healthcare professional administering the vaccine?
Exactly.
So, I mean, hopefully our friends and listeners wouldn't have to necessarily worry about
that
questions, just that the answers need to be kept confidential. So I'm going to skip ahead, actually. And here's just the ADA policy around keeping employee medical information confidential. This means when we say confidential, we mean separate from the regular personnel file. So you should have their regular personnel file, which has, you know, their resume and performance reviews in it. Then you can have a medical file and then a separate I-9 file. Okay, so this question is about, back to that sort of proof of receipt. Is asking or requiring an employee to show proof of receipt of a vaccination a disability-related inquiry? The answer is no, because there may be a variety of non-disability related reasons why somebody hasn't gotten the vaccine. Maybe it's not available. Maybe they haven't had time. So just requesting proof, like showing that card, is not a disability related inquiry. You just, like we said before, you just can't ask why an individual did not receive a vaccination, because that might bring up some ADA protected information. So you could, you know, kind of prime the pump by saying, hey, you know, when we ask you for confirmation, you don't need to give us anything else. Just show us that you got it, and that's it. We don't need to know any other thing, or show us or tell us that you didn't get it, and just that's all we need. Any other comments on this?
Yeah, I think that it's a good idea for HR and employers to know the status of the vaccine delivery in your area, so that you can have a real good idea as to, you know, is it pretty available, widely available at this point? Is there a shortage that you're aware of? Most likely your local health department will have that information.
Gosh, just one more thing for these people to keep on top of.
I know, right? All right.
Okay. So we touched on this earlier, but this is back to if they have a disability, or if they come to your HR person or your designated point person for the vaccines, and they say they have a disability. And like we said, it would be an interactive process. So I won't read through all of this, but you need to engage with them on, you know, this type of disability, and use that medical inquiry form with their physician, so the physician can be involved, and go from there. And if they have, you know, there's some scary language down here about how you should conduct an individualized assessment of 4 factors in determining whether a direct threat exists. So this is, and if I'm interpreting this correctly, Kim, and I might be wrong, but this is if they are going to opt out of getting the vaccine because they have a disability, then there's a decision that has to be made about whether or not that person would pose a direct threat,
right,
to the safety and health of others.
Right. So, you know, let's say that you're in, you know, the individual comes in, you're in this interactive process. So they're not able to get the vaccine. Could that person work from home? Could that be an accommodation that you make for that individual? Is there a way to separate them from the workplace? Like, could you put up barriers, whatever? I don't know how realistic that is, but again, you need to think. I would say the Job Accommodation Network is a great resource for accommodations, and in particular, they've addressed vaccine accommodations or the inability to get a vaccine. So that's www.askjan.org. And so again, assuming you can't make a reasonable accommodation, is that person a direct threat having not had the vaccine? And again, that goes back to, it would seem so, but again, this is where you need to involve legal counsel. They need to help you with that risk assessment. If you are going to say you can't be hired, you can't be employed here any longer because of this risk.
Right.
They need to give you guidance from that perspective.
Okay, we have a question here. We work in an open environment. If we have an employee that opts out of the vaccine, can we move their workstation to isolate them from others? Yes, that would be an accommodation.
Yes, you could, as an accommodation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen other people talk about, not only physically moving someone to a different area, but maybe staggering shifts if you can. I know every situation is unique, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you might have to get creative. And yeah, I mean, there's going to be, I would say, the rumor mill will swirl,
Mm-hmm.
but you're just going to have to manage that and be open with people and say, listen, we're trying to accommodate people, and this is,
Mm-hmm.
this is what we're going to do, and trying to, the end game here is to keep people safe. And it's not to punish people or to isolate them or to call them out in any way. It is a public health emergency.
Correct. And again, keep in mind that an accommodation could continue to be 6 feet apart, wearing masks, all of the things that we're doing right now when we don't have the vaccine. That could be the accommodation as you get further, as we get further down the road, as far as, vaccines are available, most folks are vaccinated, those types of things.
Beverly has a great question. Can an employer create a voluntary vaccine policy, and once the vaccine is more widely available, change it to a mandatory vaccine policy? Beverly, I like where your head is. I love it.
I think that is a good question. And I would say going from a voluntary to a mandatory vaccine policy, you would have to have a business reason for doing so. Meaning that if what has changed in the business that now makes it mandatory, I think that would be unlikely.
Well, and I guess she's saying, it would be based on an outside factor, which would be vaccine
Right.
availability. Gosh, that's a great question.
That is a really great question. And I think, if I'm just looking at it right now from an HR perspective, with respect to business related reason, a business reason for doing so, what has changed in making it voluntary? For example, if your workplace has stayed safe during the voluntary vaccine policy, now you're making it mandatory. What has changed?
Right.
So I think those would, here again, broken record, talk to your attorney about it, because you very well might be able to do so with respect to the vaccine availability. I'm not 100% sure that would be considered a business related reason for you, but I could be wrong.
Okay. And Anonymous says, just to be clear, we can ask if they took the vaccine, and they have to answer yes or no. We just can't ask why they took it or didn't take it. That's correct.
Correct. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Because even if you have a voluntary policy in place, you still need to know, the percentage of
Sure.
vaccination.
Absolutely. You would want that information so that you could share it with your, that you're not going to share whether or not an individual has had the vaccine. But what you can do for your client base who may be asking to say, hey, we've got 90% of our folks who've been vaccinated. You just can't hand over the documents saying who has been vaccinated and who has not.
Right. Yeah, and to my earlier point about making it very clear who and how to go to state a request for exemption, also make it really clear how, think through, now is the time to think through how you're going to collect the information about whether or not they got the vaccine. Do you do a Google form where they can upload some proof? Do you just have them walk into the HR manager's office and let them know, like, what
Show
is
the card?
Yeah, what's the collection method of that data?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Joe says, is there any guidance on work site requirements outside of our company? A portion of our employees work off-site on construction sites. And what if the off-site job requires vaccine and we don't? Can we make it mandatory for some FTEs and not others? Also a good question.
Very good question. And this, again, would be about business related reason. Like, we'll go back to what the EEOC says. Yes, you can make it mandatory, but you need to have a business related reason for doing so. So if there is a business related reason for some of those full-time employees to have the vaccine or mandate the vaccine, then yes, you can treat different groups of employees differently, as long as you're not doing so, as some sort of discriminatory reason. Right? Again, business related. I would say this though, that could impact morale, right? If I have to get the vaccine and you don't, just consider like a scenario such as this, where you're in a hospital and you're going to mandate all of the direct providers have to have the vaccine, but any executive within the building does not. So again, Joe, yes, the answer is yes. You need to have a business related reason for doing so. And then also just consider the impact on morale. Now, if these folks are working at another site, most likely that wouldn't impact the morale, at the home site.
I guess he could, if he had an objector, he could switch that person over to a different job site as to accommodate that.
Yep.
But yeah, that's a great question. You guys are asking some really good questions today. Keep them coming. Okay. Again, this is touching on that sincerely held religious belief exemption, that you might get a couple of those come your way. And like we said earlier, you need to pretty much consider those bona fide and must provide that reasonable accommodation, which would mean not getting the vaccine, unless it would be an undue hardship for you. EEOC explains that because the definition of religion is broad and protects beliefs, practices, and observances in which the employer may be unfamiliar, you should ordinarily assume that an employee's request is based on a sincerely held belief. And this is what we said before. If you'd have objective reasons for questioning it, you could request additional support information, and then I would consult an attorney. Hold on, I think I just went backwards. Let's see here. I'm gonna skip that one. Oh, that was my last one. Okay. So let me just read this one real quickly. What happens if an employer cannot exempt or provide a reasonable accommodation to an employee who cannot comply with a mandatory vaccine policy because of the religious practice or belief? So this is, you are in a situation where the vaccine policy is mandatory. Maybe your frontline medical staff or educators or in some other industry where, it just would pose a major risk to have a non-vaccinated person on the front lines. What do you do? And the answer is, it would be lawful for the employer to exclude the employee from the workplace. This does not mean that you should automatically terminate them. I think further discussion would need to happen with your counsel to determine if any other rights apply under federal, state, or local law. So this will apply to a certain number of you, maybe. certainly in those sort of sectors that we all think of as frontline sectors. And in which case, if you can't, it's one thing to accept that their belief is valid, but it's another thing entirely to risk the health and safety of your team or customers or clients or patients to have an unvaccinated person there, in which case you'd need to consider what happens then with this person. Kim, what else do you have to say on this one?
No, I think you hit it, really. I wouldn't move to termination without the guidance of legal counsel. That's the bottom line. You can exclude them. You can give them a personal leave of absence. They could work remotely, but if you're going to take adverse action, meaning, terminating them, then broken record, talk to legal counsel.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I was wrong. We did get through all of my slides today in under an hour. If you have some questions, now's the time to submit them. I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning and just stress that right now, we would really love it if you would start thinking about putting a policy in place for your workplace, whether you go the mandatory route or the voluntary route. Use this as a guide, consult with an attorney on all of the different, do some scenario planning for different types of things that will come in. Look at your communications, really, if you're lucky enough to have a communications department, put them on notice that this is going to be on their plate in terms of the right, communication. I'm a big fan of over communicating to employees, and just because that way you can control the narrative and let them know your reasons for going with whatever policy you have, and that you're going to protect them at all, at all costs. And then here are some ways that we're going to make it easier for you to comply with this policy. If you have questions, concerns, comments, here's the person you go to between the hours of this and this. And we will, treat every individual, we'll listen to every individual who comes our way. Otherwise, this is the policy, and, we're going to roll it out at this date, and, all that good stuff. So I know a lot of you already, if you're here, you're already thinking about it, and I think that's great. If you need help, if you need a little bit more information, if you have a unique situation, which I know a lot of you guys do, you can email us at questions@dominionpayroll.com, and we'll do our very best to help you navigate that situation. I did put a link in the chat earlier to the EEOC page about the vaccine, so you can see, you'll see some of the same questions that I have in this deck pop up there, and there's a bit more on there too. So this is where we are. Kim, thank you so much. We, as always,
you are very welcome.
Appreciate your
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I feel like we should have gone to law school and become employment lawyers. They're getting a lot of business right now. So let's see here. Someone says they can't see the link. Maybe I didn't do it correctly. Let me try it again.
Hey, and I'll just, if it's okay, Lesley, I just wanted to follow up on Joe's question earlier with respect to a client mandating the vaccine. And I would just, if I'm in that situation, I would, talk to the client, or whoever should be talking to the client, talk to the client and ask, why have they gone this approach, mandating the vaccine? To make sure that you as an organization are comfortable with their rationale. I think it's also appropriate to say, have you gotten legal counsel with respect to this approach? When and if you are going to send folks to that client site, I would basically attest to the fact that everybody meets the qualifications. You don't want to be in a position where you're handing over confidential information. So, make sure that they're comfortable that you're going to attest that the folks that are coming forth and will be working at their site meet their requirements, but you don't want to be in a position where you're handing over confidential information.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can see employees, asking each other, "Hey, have you got it? Have you got it?" Or maybe they have a fear that the manager of that work site is going to ask them directly. And so what you're saying is for the employer to really take the lead to own that information sharing with any sort of partners, so that the employees don't have to have any anxiety around that. I mean, some of them might be like, some of them might be wearing T-shirts that say "I got vaccinated." Like some employees will not care.
Right.
Others may care, and they might get it. Maybe they're not 100% confident with or comfortable with it, but they might go ahead and get it. Either because they want to keep their job or because they are more so than not in favor of the vaccine, but they might not want to broadcast it to people. So, think through all the ways that you're going to have to communicate to your employees, how they're going to communicate back to you, and then who you need to communicate to in terms of your partners and vendors. I have questions around, we're a payroll company. So every week we have UPS comes in and, picks up people's paychecks and takes them out. Or sometimes the companies themselves will send somebody in to pick up paychecks. Are we going, is UPS going to have a policy out there as a corporation that their drivers are going to get vaccinated? I mean, it's going to be a very interesting year in terms of how organizations communicate and navigate these policies.
Agreed.
So, all right. Well, I don't see any more questions. So hopefully you guys are at least take away something useful from this, and we'll post this on our website this afternoon by 5 o'clock, and you can have all of these lovely text-heavy slides at your disposal. Kim, as always, a pleasure. We are
thank you.
Grateful for you, and we will see you next time.
All right, everybody. Stay safe.
Have a great day.
Thanks, Lesley. Bye.
Bye.